There we go. All right, so we finished talking about economizer systems and what's the other word? Power enrichment. Now it's time to talk about mixture control systems. Why do we put a mixture control system on an airplane?
You can control the mixture.
Why do you want to control the mixture?
Because sometimes you want to be lean and sometimes you want to be rich.
I still haven't heard the right answer.
Lean it out at altitude.
Lean it out at altitude. What happens if you don't?
Rich at altitude.
It gets richer and richer and richer and richer, and what does that do for you?
Well, you have a lot of security. You can retire.
You start losing power after a certain point. So that's a bad thing. So yes, it's true that you will waste fuel, but that's not the main consideration. The main consideration is that you will lose power as you go up in altitude because it runs so rich. Is there any upside to that? To running super rich? Well, I guess you don't have to worry about detonation. But I want to make sure everybody understands that the reason why there's a mixture is because as you go up in altitude, the carburetor gets very rich and it starts losing power. Do we lose power when we go up in altitude anyway?
Yes.
All right, so now you're losing power for two reasons. One, because you went up in altitude and the air's thinner, and two, because you're dumping a whole bunch of fuel in the carburetor. So now you're losing power twice. So that's even worse. So
Does that dictate where your ceiling can be?
No, ceiling dictation really has more to do with loss of power versus airframe design. But yeah, so the two would work together to do that. So, all right, so mixture control system. So as altitude increases, the air, what has less? Has less density, has less pressure, which is almost the same thing, but it also has less temperature. Two of these things are bad, and one of these things is good. Which one is the good one?
Temperature.
Temperature. Colder temperature does help. All right, let me see. I'll just stick with it. So the problem is,
But that temperature is only to a certain point, correct? Otherwise it starts to ice.
no, you'll get ice.
Okay.
I've never had carb ice. One time. I had carb ice one time, and it was on the ground on a cold, it's a cool day with a lot of moisture in the air. You know, I had to wait for the fog to burn off and sitting there idling, and that was it. Otherwise, I don't know. I hear people talk about carb ice, but I've just never experienced it, except for that. Never in flight. Problem as altitude increases. Less air is available for combustion. Less air is available for combustion. The Venturi works off of velocity. And does not compensate for density. Density. So that's an important point, especially when we start moving into some other type fuel systems that do compensate for that. You'll understand why. So the Venturi just doesn't know that it just knows the velocity of air going through, which is the speed, but it doesn't really know the density of it. So it's like, oh, air's coming through at this speed. Well, I better give it this much fuel. Well, hey, wait a minute. It's like half the air. Well, I don't know anything about that. So here's your fuel. So then it gets super rich. So as air thins, like my hair, Don't laugh at that. The same amount of fuel. Amount of fuel is still added to the engine, or sent to the engine. Don't bless him. He's just heathen. I'm just kidding. Jesus loves you.
He's all he can do.
What do I got here? Oh yeah, that's interesting. So at 18,000 feet, I've never been that high in a little airplane, an engine needs about 1/2 the amount of fuel. Fuel at sea level. So how come everybody doesn't go up high and go? Why do we stay low? What's that?
Airframe and engine limitations.
To a point, yeah.
Oxygen.
Take some with you.
It's cold as fuck up there. And it says negative 60 degrees. That's what it says in my airplane when I'm flying across the country or something like that.
In which airplane?
On like a 737 or something.
Okay, yeah.
My airplane, I said my airplane, I meant not the airplane. I meant the airplane.
You do that in your Luscombe now?
Watch your Luscombe at 18.
That's something to do with class alpha airspace.
You're getting a good pilot, aren't you, boy?
It does, yeah. You have to file IFR to fly above that, or at that and above. But no, it's a different way of thinking, you know. So for most of my flying, it's not a career. Most of my flying, I did in small airplanes, Cessna 140, 150, and the Smith mini plane, you know, which is smaller than both of them. And they all have fixed pitch propellers, so it's a different way of thinking. So you just fly around the valley. Don't really, you know, I flew the 140 down to LA one time, and I remember one of the games I like to play is look out the window, put the wheel right on the highway. So you're looking at the wheel, and you can superimpose it on the highway. You follow? I'm like not putting it on the highway. I'm looking down, and you can see if you're like going faster in the cars. You can kind of appreciate your speed. Otherwise, you don't sense it. And I remember coming back from LA with my wife, looking down there, and the cars just going by, and the controller finally called up, and he's like, "Are you okay up there? Because you're not really going anywhere." I'm like, "I know," because we had a bit of a headwind, so I didn't get anywhere. But you know, it's a different way of thinking. And then when I got the plane I have now, and I wanted to take my first real long cross country by myself and talk to a CFI, you know, I just met the guy, so I never really talked to him before. And, you know, it was kind of fun because it's a whole new way of thinking. And I'm like, you know, what should I do? And he's like, go high, go fast. I'm like, what? He's like, think about it, man. He goes, you know, the higher you go, the less fuel you're going to use. But now you got a constant speed prop that's going to just twist into that, and it's going to take a nice big bite of what little air is there, compensate for it, and it's going to pull you along. You're going to go fast. So go high, go fast, use low fuel. I'm like, really? I never thought about that, you know? And he's like, yeah, well, that's what you do when you have a plane like that. So you get there a lot faster, and then it works that way. So so to go up higher, especially with the constant speed, the prop will twist, take a big bite. But if you have a fixed pitch propeller, then they don't do so well up at altitude, because we'll get into props. But fixed pitch propellers are really only designed to work at one forward velocity at 1 RPM. It's like there's a very narrow range where they're, and outside that range, you're super inefficient. So it just doesn't work as well. Okay, so we got to do all that stuff, right? So that's why we want this mixture control, which is important. When I had the 150, well, we flew the 140 with the Stromberg. I was the typical student pilot, you know, with the typical instructor. See that red knob? Don't touch it. I mean, okay, there's your lesson. You know, don't lean it. Bad things will happen. You know, the engine to part light will come on or something. I don't know. So, and then I started flying the 150, and the 150 didn't have, you know, they don't have much instrumentation. They don't have an EGT. They don't have a cylinder head temp. They have nothing but an oil temp gauge. And ours ran hot. And so it was like, you know, everybody says, and even the POH is, you know, if you're below 5,000, don't lean. Just don't even worry about it. And then I put in a 4-cylinder EGT CHT probe, and everybody laughed at me. I have like the most instrumented 150 in the world now. And but I wanted to know, I wanted to experiment with the mixture and get to know it. Well, I got that all in and started messing with it, and then I'd sold the plane. But yeah, so most students are told don't even touch the mixture until you get to 5,000 feet. And sadly, everybody else is told, well, if you have an EGT, go to peak, but then once you get to peak, you better enrich in it, by at least 50 degrees. 50 is good, and you know where that's going to put them. So that's what everybody says. All right, mixture has two functions. Let me see. Oh, sure. It's kind of the same thing, if you ask me. Mixture control has two functions. I don't know where if you can see TIO, where that story was headed. There was a point. Maybe the point is that with the airplane I have now, man, I'm on that mixture all the time. I'm always messing with it. Even, like I said, even at 1,500 feet on the way home, I'll lean it. Two functions: adjust the mixture to compensate for altitude. So what's that going to do? What's your goal for that? Adjust the mixture to compensate for altitude. Goal is?
Less fuel.
Power. Got to get my power back. Second one, economize fuel flow at cruise settings. What's my goal there?
Go further.
Money. Save money. All right. Types. What do I got here? I said 3 types. Oh, jeez. Back section. I guess. There's really 2 main types that we're going to look at, but I'll throw in one other one there. So 3 types. 1, what types does Stromberg have? What are we talking about? Talking about what? Manual mixture control. What kind does Stromberg have? Back suction. Let's do this. Back suction type. Well, let's see here. Who else has a back suction type? Economizer. Let me see. Where's my mixture controls? Let's see what we got here. Mixture controls. Oh, not talking about that one yet. Needle type. Airport type. Really? I don't like either of those. Oops. Hey, we already talked about this type. MA4 SPA, also the MA3A carburetors use this type right here. And this is right in here. We have a... No, never mind. I was going to start talking about economizer systems. Sorry about that. Am I forgiven?
Yeah.
But I do know what I want to talk about. Hang on there. We're going to get there. We already got there. Let me see. Stromberg. There we go. So type 1, back suction type. Which one has that? The Stromberg. Thank you. Okay, I'm back together. Thank you. For those of you, I'm just joining you. So this one has a back suction. We went over this, right? So there are 2 channels. Channel 1, channel 2. Channel 1 has what?
Atmospheric pressure.
I think I just called this one 1 and then 2 and then asked about that one. This one right here. What does that have? Atmospheric pressure. And this one has?
Venturi section.
It's above the Venturi.
Just low pressure.
So it is not Venturi suction.
Lower than atmospheric.
It is lower than atmospheric. Why is it lower than atmospheric?
Because you have,
It's after that.
in the throttle body, you have,
Well, wait.
After the Venturi.
Yeah, what'd you say?
well, I was saying the throttle body is always lower than the Venturi.
Throttle body's always lower, and you said the same thing. It is lower right here because it is. Say it with me. What?
You say the same thing?
Yeah, saying the same thing, but you got it and he got it, and the rest of them are over here like, huh?
I thought you were expecting something different.
Yeah, me too. I was like,
No.
what?
I said, say it with me. I got to close the door because some of these I'm worried the flies are going to get in their mouth.
Well, you know, it's factory classes for everybody.
Okay, so all together now, class. Why is this a low pressure right here? Because it's above the Venturi. The Venturi is a restriction. So once we pass a restriction, we have a lower pressure. All right. Yay! So we have, it's blue. So we have a suction right there. So when it is in this position up here, then we close off some of the yellow, allowing this lower pressure to have an effect on this. So it lowers this pressure by a little bit. When we lower this by a little bit, then it becomes closer to Venturi pressure, which means it would be the same thing as not having much Venturi pressure. If we had less Venturi suction, then we would get less fuel out. Okay, what is the, no. So, I was going to say something dumb. So, that creates less pressure here. So that is the back suction type of mixture control. Why does this work at idle?
No.
Why does it not work at idle?
No pressure past the Venturi.
Because the valve is going to close like this. And then what is below the throttle valve?
Ambient.
This is all yellow. Look at that. So that makes this yellow right here. So since everything is yellow at idle, then what gets over here?
Yellow.
Yellow. This would be better if I had like a bigger pen, I think. So it's all yellow. So if it's all yellow, then what happens if I put this in idle cutoff? There is no such thing as idle cutoff on this. So you can do it all day long. You know what you can do? You can put this in this position here, so you can put it, while it's in idle, put it in lean, and try and add some throttle. It ain't going to work. It's going to bark and snort at you and then die. Because as you open up the throttle, what happens? Now you start getting the suction in there, and so it just ain't going to work. So, all right, back suction type. Everybody's cool with that? All right, back suction. Let's see. Stromberg uses this. It's actually spelled B-E-R-G, right?
Strong.
Strom. Just call it Strom. It's T-R-O-M-B. I think it's E-R-G.
Yeah, it's
Looks like strawberry.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of berg that is. But all my notes have U-R-G. Stromberg uses this. He uses this style. Suction is applied to fuel bowl from... Okay, so I'll put a low pressure is applied to float chamber. This, what do I say? I wish they could call this air metering force. Lowers the air metering force, but it doesn't work that way. This, give me a word here. Huh? Less, that's just terrible. Less fuel to be discharged. I don't like to say that because, like, well, why? but I just explained to you. So without writing it all out, it's because the pressures get closer to equal. What's that?
Fuel metering force?
Yeah, that's the word I wanted.
Lowers fuel metering.
Yeah. That trips me up because I like that better. Because they should call that air metering force. I don't know why
But
they
you're
don't.
metering the fuel, not the air.
You are metering here, clearly.
Well, you are, but it then goes to fuel.
Let me tell you why. In a little bit, we're going to talk about pressure carburetors and fuel injection systems for Bendix. And they use 4 forces. Venturi suction, an impact pressure, metered fuel, and unmetered fuel. Guess what the 2 air things are called? Air metering force. Doesn't that make all the sense in the world? The 2 airs. So if you have more venturi and more impact, you have more air metering force. It's air. So in everything else, air is air metering force. And these, it's fuel metering force is air. So I hate that. All right, let's see. That works enough, I think. Let me see. We have the needle type. I'm going to say needle type. I'm just going to throw my own word here. Valve type. They're going to work kind of the same. Needle type or the valve type. All right, let's go over here. Discard. Go back up to here. Economizer, automatic mixture controls. There we go. There's a representation of the back suction mixture control in a different type of carburetor that we could look at. So we have, let me see, fuel discharge is right there. Airflow, it's a downdraft. So downdraft carburetor. And so this is going to be a higher pressure air coming in here. So higher pressure air right there with a little bit of suction line. It's the same thing, but it just works a little bit different. So, let's see.
If you close that valve and then it pulls from the suction line. The suction line then.
This drawing looks the same as that drawing, except they close that. But yes, so as this is closed off, then suction here would have more an effect right here. But this has the suction here in the venturi. It's where the Stromberg does it, and it takes a pressure off of the incoming airflow, which is similar. So, but the idea is the same. You either you either have ambient type pressure above the fuel, or you start adding a suction, which decreases the pressure here, makes it very similar to over here. So the fuel metering force starts to line up, and then you get nothing out because the fuel metering force is 0. All right, then we have the needle type. So in this one, what's happening is we have a manual mixture control. Fuel comes down through here, so this would be the float chamber right here. And then as this needle is opened all the way, full rich, then this space right here is bigger than this right here. What is this right here, this part? All right, main metering jet. So this is now bigger than the main metering jet. But as we go up in altitude, I start to lean out, this needle drops in here. And as it drops, this space is now going to be smaller than the main metering jet. So this does the metering. And as this is doing the metering, it's going to lean out the carburetor. All right. What is this little straw for?
That's the air metering. It's an
Air bleed, main air bleed. What's it doing over here? What's that? Behind the venturi. What's always behind the venturi? Atmospheric pressure. What's this one right here for? Same thing, but for the. All right, so you're getting that. That's pretty good. Main air bleed?
Main air bleed.
Main air bleed. All right, so I said needle type or valve type because your Marvel Schebler carburetors work exactly like this, except instead of a needle and seat, it's a rotating valve. So it goes in a sleeve, and it has a hole in the sleeve, and then that lines up. And so at one point it's wide open, and it's actually a very large hole. It's surprising that it does the metering and how small it must have to get to actually get smaller than the main metering jet, but that's what it does.
Is it like a ball valve, or
Mm-mm.
it
It's
has
like a valve valve.
It's a solid. It's a sleeve with a whole slot in it, and then
You got one in the bucket?
I do. I was thinking it was in my office. I don't think I have the bottom half though.
Show me the top.
There we go. I used to have one. Here it is. There. That's the. Look out! That's the rotating piece. This goes in a little cup. I see. Okay. Yes.
Is there any name for that channel behind the venturi that has that atmospheric pressure, or is it just? Yeah.
Main bleed area visible.
The behind the Venturi area.
Okay.
Technical name.
I forget how you say it in English, but
This sits in here and twists like so.
yes,
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
that is.
with a speedometer cable.
massive. Yeah.
And it goes into the mixture metering sleeve is the thing that it goes into. So it's this exact same concept. This just shows it as a needle that goes up and down versus a rotating thing. Is that Mustang? Are they still running that thing? Oh, it's a helicopter, I think.
Yeah, that sounds like a
Yeah. Okay. So with the back suction type, it's interesting that this one says idle cutoff down here. Unless you're watching it online, you can't see anything in this little area right there. But it says idle cutoff. There. For those of you at home. Which implies that you could, in fact, shut the carburetor off with this. So idle cutoff means, oh, by the way, idle cutoff, it's kind of a misnomer. It works at all at all throttle settings. We call it an idle cutoff, but you can fly around at full throttle and pull, it'll cut it off. So we call it idle cutoff because that's where you're supposed to use it. But this implies that this system would shut it down at idle. Do you agree or disagree?
Don't really see how.
Yeah, I don't even know what's going on. I don't know. Like,
It's
Oh,
back
idle
suction.
Cutoff valve up there. Oh, so if you cut it off there,
Well, this is the same thing.
oh, what the fuck?
Oh, I see. It's two different systems.
One's going below the venturi.
Yeah, one's above and one's below. So this would work because down here is where there's a massive amount of suction from the pistons.
So it'll lean the shit out of it.
It's going to come through here, and when this is closed, if you open this up, you're going to get straight up vacuum right through here into here. This pressure will equal this pressure.
no fuel.
Yeah, so nothing would flow out of here. This is not the same valve. It's wired different, so this would be the, I don't know, this particular carburetor real well. There must be another, like this and this must be like a long thing that go. I imagine this is the same as this, like it's all one tube, but one half of it is for mixture and the other half is for idle cutoff is the way I'd imagine that.
It looks like on the left hand one, it has the suction line is much smaller and
Yep.
further in
Yep.
into the venturi. So if you open it up, you have a much larger line that's further up into the airstream. So it just does the same thing, just with the incoming airflow instead of the backside of the throttle.
Right, but I was saying for how would you build this carburetor? It's two systems in one. So this right here is something that has to be attached to this directly. So these two things have to be connected, but the air passages are not connected because you only have one shaft on the carburetor that is going to move both of those little things. So they're probably lined up.
I imagine that would be more like a ball valve where it's got the through hole in it and it just rotates at the top.
Yeah, but they're separate. So, okay. So, does this one have an idle cutoff? Meaning, can I shut off the carburetor with this?
You could you could close
Yeah,
the
you
needle all the way.
could close the fuel all the way.
When this needle comes down and takes a seat right there, guess how much fuel goes through there?
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Nothing. Same thing with that thing that's being passed around. When it's turned to the closed position, how much fuel gets through?
0.
0. So it works as a fuel cutoff to the engine. Now, it's not the fuel cutoff for safety reasons. If you had a fire, it doesn't do anything. It's just there in the carburetor. So, all right. Needle type or valve type, if you like. Where am I at here? Needle type. The Marvel Schebler has the valve type. It uses a valve, or needle to control fuel flow to the main metering jet. I think it has much better control. Probably that's why most carburetors have this system. Actually cuts off fuel.
Finer adjustment to it.
Yes. At all power settings. I'll circle back around to that. Okay, then there's the airport type. Although I've never seen this particular style on a carburetor I've worked on. It's kind of funky, but it looks like it's a Stromberg of some sort, maybe the larger Strombergs. So here's your throttle valve. Here's your airport mixture control. Valve open and closes and lets air go in past the venturi. So if I want to lean it out, open it, so air is going to bypass this venturi, come around this way and go that way. So less air now is going past the venturi. So if less air goes to the venturi, then that lowers the suction right here, which lowers the amount of fuel that goes out.
Seems like the most simple.
It really does. Yeah. It's a calibrated leak. Let's see. And then when you close it, then all the air has to go through here, and then it's going to create more of a suction. It's going to run richer.
I'm guessing you would be able to turn this one off like a fuel cutoff.
I was kind of thinking about that. Just depends on how much air. It may not do it nicely, but it probably does it.
I mean, yeah, it would, like, if you're giving it enough air, yeah, it would sputter out, but it would cleanly just pull the mixture and then just shuts it.
The valve opens. Or closes, allowing intake air to bypass venturi. There, that was shorter.
You can make it from here? Yeah, I was just looking at Kevin. Oh my god, I was so oh, I get that in brick.
We get it. It went in that little space right between the wall and the.
Fuck, if there was any worse, I would have gone right in the light switch. We were right in the outlet.
That's all right. One time, I was working in the shop, something, and it was like, I don't know. I still can picture it in my head, and I had a bunch of tools and my hammer in my hand, but I was holding it by the head, inside the the stick out, and the boss like, "Can you turn off the light?" And I went over and hit it like that. Just barely touched it, and it just exploded the light switch. He's like, "Well, don't hit it with a damn hammer!" I just barely touched it, man.
Barely touched.
All right, Idle cutoff. Idle cutoff. Also called ICO, which stands for idle cutoff. It is actually the position of the mixture that shuts off fuel to the engine. Why is that such a big deal? Why is it a thing?
So you don't have fuel left over in your engine when you shut it down?
Yep. Safer to use than ignition. Because all fuel is burnt up. Well, that's redundant. Then there's no unburnt fuel in the cylinders. And no risk of kickback when ignition is turned off. You ever heard a car kind of diesel on after it's been shut off? What causes that? What's that?
It's hot in the combustion chamber.
Hot in the combustion chamber. You've got some little glowing carbon embers, right? And so even though you've shut off the ignition, what is it?
Yeah, I shut my car off sometimes. It just keeps running. It just keeps going a little bit. And then it just,
Do you have a carburetor?
no, not that one.
You have a leaky fuel injection?
Yeah, maybe.
So it's
No,
getting...
It's probably because the return line was completely blocked, so it had no fuel going back.
Yeah. So, yeah, so you can get that run on. But if you shut off the fuel, then it can't do that. And if it do that, then it's running on air, and that's really cool. And you should don't do that. Your car runs on air. Enjoy it. So an aircraft, and remember, if you're the mechanic and you're working on an airplane, you go get an airplane, or whenever you're going to work around it. And I do it on my own plane, right? If I'm going to start the annual or an oil change or anything, to shut it off, I reach over and I grab the key and I go to off and then back on. Why do I do that? What?
Make sure it works.
What worked? Make sure the switch worked and it shut off the engine. I can hear it dying. Go back to on, grab the mixture, pull it to what?
Pull back.
It's called what?
Shut off.
Idle cutoff. And the engine should do what?
Increasing RPM and then.
Increase a little bit in RPM and then die. Okay. Then what do you do?
Push back really fast.
No, you're done. You turned it off. What do you do now? Turn off the dang ignition. Take it out of the ignition switch. That's a hard rule with mechanics on aircraft. You never leave the key in the ignition. Never, never, ever.
I don't
Unless you're
understand
flying.
Why you did that? Why? So nobody, to prevent it from going on?
We had a thing where I worked is the key had to come out and up on the instrument panel where you could see it from the outside of the aircraft. So when you're going to work on it, you walk up, you can see the key sitting there, you know you got a safe engine. Assuming that the mags aren't hot, which they could be, but yeah, key out. I always pull my key out and I hang it on one of the instruments, so I don't put it up on the instrument panel. So always make sure you do that. There's another added layer of safety you can do with this, and I'll often do that. As you pull the idle mix out and the engine's dying, push the throttle all the way forward, and it will empty out the carburetor. It'll empty out the accelerator pump, opens the throttle plate, and lets more air go through the engine, which tends to burn up any gas at all in there. So it really doesn't want to start now. So safer to use. And what was my third reason for doing it? Allows check of idle mixture rise. What's idle mixture rise?
Rise in RPM.
Yep.
RPM goes up right before it goes down.
Yep. Okay. Automatic mixture control.
Seems like you don't like automatic mixture control.
Why? Because I had the heavy sigh there?
Yeah.
I don't know any carburetors that have this. And how hard is it to reach over and pull the mixture? It's not that hard. All right, automatic mixture control. We are going to see more and more of these involved in things as we go. So you have to get used to this little apparatus and its many, many uses. So this is the easiest place to start. So it is a sealed bellows, which means that this part right here can expand and contract. And I use my potato chip bag analogy because that's what I know. But not real well, because when I buy a bag of potato chips and I'm headed up to the mountains, guess how long that bag of potato chips stays sealed? Yeah, it's usually opened as soon as I pay for
I
it.
opened it before I came.
I had. I'm not going to have to pay for these. This bag is empty. All right, so you can use it many different ways, but understand, our potato chip bag analogy that okay, this is sealed with an inert gas, and as air heats up around it, this will expand. As air gets colder, it will contract. As we go up in altitude, it will expand. As we go down in altitude, it will contract. Don't let that confuse you with, well, wait a minute, what if we go up in altitude and it gets colder? The up in altitude wins, right? It has more power over this than the air temperature. So as we go up in altitude, it will expand. But if I were here on a cold day, then it would be contracted. And then if I were here on a very hot day, it would expand out. And that's good because the air here, when it's very hot, is not as dense as it is today. So, Brandon, you've been awful quiet. You've been flying planes for how long?
About a year and a half.
Year and a half. So through the summer, through the winter.
Basically, yeah.
Is there a big difference between taking off in the middle of summer and taking off on a nice, cool morning?
Yeah, the 150 climbs about twice as fast in the cold. Yeah, it's so slow. It climbs. It takes by the time I'm halfway through the pattern here, then I reach pattern altitude. So, on a cold day, I'll reach it before I even get to the crosswind turn.
So yeah, there's a bit. Well, the other fun thing about being a newer pilot is you fly in these 150s with somebody who's probably a little bit bigger than him, and that's all you know. And then one day they get out of the airplane, and they're like, "You're soloing," and you take off. You're like, "Whoa!" It's like a homesick angel, man. It's like, yeah.
Quite a bit more when you land too.
It does what?
Floats a little more.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part. Yeah.
Everyone forgets that part.
Yeah, that's floaty. It doesn't matter here. You got 10,000 feet. You can float all day. Just tell them you're going to get fuel. Fuel's at this end. All right. So that's what this does. So we have this sealed bellows, and we can put it right here in this little spot here, as they did. So let's see what it says. Automatic mixture control unit, needle position automatically controlled by air pressure on bellows corresponding to an altitude and temperature. I said that. Float chamber pressure controlled by needle valve. So what is it doing? So we can see here that as we go up in altitude, it's going to do what? Expand. So we're down here, it's going to be contracted. So when it's contracted, there's going to be a passage right here. And as we go up in altitude, it's going to start to restrict that passage. Well, what do we have right here? Back suction bleed. Always open or controllable? Always open. So we're always going to be getting a little suction right into here. And this is just like the Stromberg, if you ask me. So we've always got some suction applied to it. But if this is open wide enough, then it has no use whatsoever. There's
a screw open or something like that?
This right here.
Yeah,
That's the bellows.
I know
That's
that. But
Oh, this is what's here. Yes,
but that's what I'm saying.
there is a
Like-
screw on top, so
Yeah.
you could adjust it should you
well,
need to.
It just looks like as if it expands, it's actually going to open up that part. To me,
Right here, as it expands, it's going to open this up.
yeah. So if you go up and that expands, it's going to let more.
Wait, it expands it would restrict that opening.
As it expands, it's going to close this up.
Yes.
Oh, it
And-
expands downward.
Yes.
Okay, I think it expands outward.
No,
I was
that's.
thinking that too. I was a little.
Then I started to follow his train of thought, and then oh god,
Okay.
yeah, everybody's like, "What are you two talking about?" Yeah, I'm just trying to teach him the way he learns. All right, so
Where's my crack?
as we go up, there was your crack. What?
Yeah.
Bring up
Oh, cracker.
powder or refined sugar.
Okay. Go up in altitude. This expands. This starts to restrict, which means this has more of a effect on this, which means lowers pressure here, which is closer there. So that is called the what now?
Levels it means.
The fuel metering force. So it drops the fuel metering force, so less fuel comes out. All right. What if you don't want this to do anything?
Then you take it out.
Tough. There's no on or off.
Yeah, put a bunch of washers in it.
Yes. Take it out, put a plate over it. All right, so we're on a very, very hot day. This expands a little bit, which does the same thing. Follow? Okay. What happens if this gets a hole in it?
Doesn't work.
Then it doesn't work, and it's like it's not there. So I think there are several FA test questions about, what if the bellows isn't working? Or, okay, well then it's not there and it doesn't work. You should know that. Then it's,
It's fail-safe. So it's fail-safe and it's full rich.
yeah. Yeah, it's not going to fall down.
Oh, it's not. It's got a little springer or something.
Oh, no, it's made out of copper.
Okay.
Yeah.
The bellows are made of copper?
It's like a copper, yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't really have much contraction. Then. It's not.
It wants to be contracted. It takes some force to expand it.
Okay.
So its natural relaxed state is contracted. I think that's it. Yeah, that's
How do you
just,
get a hole in here then?
well, it is metal, so it can metal fatigue.
Okay.
All right, automatic mixture control with the use of bellows. How much time do I have? A minute. With the use of a bellows. All three types of mixture controls can be made automatic. Can be made automatic. You're still going to have the manual to add to it, but you can't override it. As altitude increases, bellows expands. As altitude decreases, bellows contracts. Means get smaller. Yes.
Are the bellows made of an elastomeric material? If that means anything to you?
They're metallic. Like I said, it's almost like a copperish. I'll bring one over.
Okay.
Used with manual mixture control. Yeah, you wouldn't not get the manual mixture control, then you would lose it. What's that?
Then you lose it all.
If you didn't have a manual mixture control and that thing broke, you'd just run really rich. So you still have to have a manual mixture control. So you still have the automatic, you still have the red knob.
You have to have a way to lean it.
You have to have a way to lean it because it's not going to be perfect. I believe it's going to get you closer, but it's still going to caution it to
That's
rich.
why you think they're fine tuning.
Yeah,
Because all you do is it prevents you from moving in like an extra quarter inch.
yeah, and it's like one more thing to break. Yeah.
I'm guessing you just like in conjunction with that, where it's like you were talking about yesterday, where you're coming down in altitude, if you forget to adjust the mixture control.
Nope, because if I forgot to do that and I still had it out, it's going to override the bellows.
Oh.
Bellows can't fix dumb. Yeah. All right, we already covered that.
Time check, sir.
Yep, thanks.